Sweet eternal balance of all that is good, true, and beautiful, friends. From hypotheses to theory to action, that is the path of the human who aims to change the world. Our internal work and processes are key to saving all of ourselves and thereby all of humanity. And yet we also need our way showers, researchers, and scribes to show us what we could not previously see. We need them to expose for us what actually happens behind the curtains, beyond the veil, and betwixt two opposing forces in this mad world we find ourselves in. There are few who have peered so deeply and in so much detail into the facts, methods, and ultimate goals of the overarching agenda behind technology's advance and the many vectors chosen to inject it into our bodies, minds, and hearts than Wayne McRoy Jr., and I am so incredibly grateful to finally get him on Rogue Ways. Wayne, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thanks for having me here, Lindsay, and thank you for that wonderful introduction.
Every word of it deserved. I'll mention here that we've had some trouble getting this show started and going. There seems to be a heavy shadow ban or straight up censorship against you specifically, probably because of your work with vaccines. And so we're both keeping our fingers crossed that this works out better than the last few tries we've had. But before we jump in, let me remind all of our badass listeners out there that Rogue Ways is part of the Eyes Open Network, which is a collective of creators comprised of myself, Benjamin Balderson of Odin's Alchemy, Claude Furry of Talking Nonsense, and Steve Poikonen of Slow News Day, and also now John Brisson of FixYourGut.com. These incredible creators get together to deliver a State of the Union once a month, where you can expect wacky antics, topical, philosophical wanderings, and nearly illegal amounts of fun. And the Eyes Open Network also has a collective of services and goods you can trust from minds that are woke and hearts that are open through the Eyes Open Network page on rogueways.org. So go check it out to support some badasses who have your best interests at heart. There's lots of goodies there for you to find. But first, for the pointless question of the episode, Wayne, what would you be happy to inject into yourself?
I don't think I'd necessarily be happy to inject anything in particular into myself. If I did have to choose something, though, I think I would pick coffee. I'm an avid coffee junkie, so that would probably be my best bet.
That seems like the safest bet out of all of the many things that people are injecting into themselves these days.
A straight caffeine drip, you can't go wrong.
Yes. I just am like wondering, I'm feeling too like, I'm just realizing right now, like piercing our skin intentionally to push things into our body is such a strange choice when you think about the however many hundreds of thousands, if not much longer of years that humans have been wandering around not injecting things into themselves.
Yeah, it's kind of a strange thing when you think about it. Vaccination technology, it's a relatively recent thing. I mean, it only goes back maybe the past 250 years or so to the late 1700s. I think it was like that was when it was first tried out, when they first started doing the cowpox. So yeah, it's kind of a relatively recent innovation, and I can't believe the way the mainstream is pushing that this is such a necessary part of being healthy. Because really, just look at the damage vaccines are doing.
Yeah, well, it's interesting too. I know we didn't mean to really start this way, but I had a conversation with some of my students today because one of them said something about the zombie apocalypse and anti-vaxxers. And I was like, first of all, when you label a whole group of people and dismiss them, that's called bigotry. Like, you're being ignorant. And so describing a group as anti-vaxxers is pretty cold-hearted. But also, if you're 17 and you've never read any of the research that actually supports or goes in the face of vaccines, it's pretty silly to talk as though you have some sort of authority on the subject. Most adults I know have never done any research on it at all. They just blindly trust, which I'm not going to criticize too harshly. There's a lot of reasons why people trust, that people have their best interests at mind. But it's just interesting that people just adopt these stances, without much thought. So it's getting maybe easier for them to push so hard.
No, that's the big thing about this too, is most people don't have a leg to stand on. Like they cannot really argue the vaccine science with you. They've never done the research. They'll just resort to name calling and that kind of a thing.
Yep.
And just saying, you're stupid and this and that. And, the only people that I know that really do any research on this are, the people you would call anti-vaxxers. They're the ones that know the information about these vaccines, that have read studies. I've picked apart literally dozens upon dozens of vaccine studies, and I could tell you that, what they do in these vaccine studies and call it science, that drives me nuts, because it's not science what they do. They come up with the result they want before they even do the study, and then they tailor the study to show the result they want. That's how it works. So
Bought and paid from the start.
that's right. So I mean, you could do a study that could show anything you want to do. If you decide you want to do a study that shows, that this is the result that you want, you could have somebody put it together and skew the data so that
Right.
it shows what you want. And that's exactly what they do with these vaccine studies. Because when it comes down to it, who does the vaccine studies? The vaccine manufacturers.
Right.
So you can't
Not
tell me
biased at all.
there's no conflict of interest there, right? So
Yeah.
it's not regulated by like an oversight committee or something like most people would tend to think. It's not. And when you consider some of these vaccine companies, they put billions and billions of dollars into research and development of these things. They have a vested interest in this thing actually passing safety testing and stuff like that. So, of course, it's going to pass. Of course, they're going to say, yeah, it's perfectly safe. You could go back even to the polio vaccine in the 1940s. And even on up through, I think it was in the 1960s when they started pushing that one heavily. And that one turned up having SV40 in it. And
Which
SV40, it's simian virus 40. And what it is it's a virus that comes from monkeys. And they were using monkey cells in this vaccine, the polio vaccine, and Merck Pharmaceutical knowingly put it to market, knowing full well it had this in it. And they also knew that it caused cancer. So
those bastards.
there you go. Yeah. So, I mean, and this is going back. You could even look this up. There's a gentleman named Maurice Hilleman. He was the former head of Merck Pharmaceutical. He did an interview with PBS. It was sometime in the 1990s. And you could find this clip on YouTube still. And he just openly talks about this, that they found the SV40, virus in the polio vaccines. And, they were laughing about it on camera and stuff, and they put it out to market knowing full well it causes cancer. So
it's insane. Like, how are they so detached from human suffering?
that's what bothers me the most. It's like, how is it that they do this and still have a clear conscience?
They cannot have a conscience at all. There's no way that it's clear if they have one.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I can't understand. I mean, yeah, it's a lot of money and stuff involved with that, but are you going to sell your soul over it? I mean,
yeah,
I guess people must, because, I think most of the people, involved in, the product chain and stuff of it, they don't really completely understand what's going on. And they just toe the company line and push the product and, collect their paycheck and do what they're supposed to, because, that's their job, and, that's their livelihood.
and I'm sure genuinely believe they're helping people, because that's the myth that we're all sold, that vaccines are going to save lives and that they help people and that they're necessary for healthy babies and happy societies. And so if they're a part of that and they believe that, then they feel like they're doing a really good job.
Oh, absolutely. And they don't even question it. They just, the vaccine manufacturer, or, whoever is pushing this, the marketer, they just tell them, oh, well, this vaccine prevented like 72 million cases of measles. How do you prove that?
Based on what? Yeah.
See, that's the thing. But if they say, oh, well, this prevented an estimated 72 million cases of measles, well, that's what everybody in the, what the media is going to tell, and what all the people are going to push out there. That's what they believe, because it comes from the authority figure. Yeah, and that is where we have a lot of disconnect in this society. People to put too much stock into people who are authority figures.
Yeah,
and
well, that's like that.
That's part of mind control.
Your what?
That's part of the mind control.
Yeah, and it's that famous Stanford prison experiment. No, it's not even the Stanford prison experiment. It's although I think that shows a similar result. But there's one where they had people come into a room, and someone in a lab coat told them to start shocking the person behind the door, this cell, this inmate that was supposedly in there. And the people who were doing it would keep shocking every time they were told to, and the person would start screaming and begging them to stop, and they kept shocking them even after they stopped responding. It's an actor, of course, and they're not actually getting shocked, but that, as far as the person doing it knows, it's real. So they actually just killed someone because they walked into a room and a person in a lab coat told them to. I'm like, geez, a person in a lab coat has enough authority to make you kill? Just a lab coat. It's just a piece of clothing.
Yeah, and that's exactly part and parcel of what's going on here. I mean, somebody comes out, okay, they're a big shot at the CDC or whatever, and they say, well, vaccines are perfectly safe. They've saved countless lives, and it's the bargain basement technology of the 21st century. Blah 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 blah. And that's the line that they toe all the time. And because there's some big shot with the CDC, you know, people will just take their word as gospel, and that's that. And that's not necessarily the case. I'm telling you, when you actually look into these studies and tear them apart, there's a lot of shady stuff going on there.
That's pretty creepy. I think I was listening to you on Crow not that long ago, and it was the first time I learned that instead of a placebo, they use other vaccines as the control,
Yep.
right?
Yep. Absolutely true. If they're
So it's
testing a
like,
new vaccine, they'll use an old vaccine as the placebo.
so they'll
Because
have vaccines that were already not necessarily proven accurate being used to test new vaccines that have not been proven accurate.
right, so when they don't see any discrepancy in the numbers from the new vaccine compared to the old vaccine, then oh, it's safe. It works just as well. It's just as effective as the old one, and this and that, and that's what they go with. They do not use a real placebo in these vaccine studies.
So in
They
that,
use another vaccine, or if they don't use a vaccine, they use just the adjuvants and all the other garbage that they put in the vaccines instead.
which is the shit doing the real damage anyway,
Right.
probably. That's a
Right.
crazy
That's
thing
what my
too.
research has shown.
When you broke down some of the ingredients in there, I can't imagine why some of them would be in anything that you would inject into yourself, especially, I don't know, maybe I could like justify to myself that I'm older and my body can maybe deal with it better or something, but a baby? Like, why would you inject this into a baby?
Yeah, the one that gets me is the hepatitis shot that they give them no sooner they're born.
Geez, yeah, for
Like,
what?
what's the point? Because the only way to get hepatitis is either through intravenous drug use or through sexual contact. It's an
There's
infant, a
like the
newborn
baby's
infant
gonna
is
go
not
have
going to
sex.
be it's not going to be exposed to that. And
You
in
got
any
bigger problems than hepatitis C if that baby is being exposed to intravenous drugs and sex.
well, that's the thing. Yeah, I mean,
It's ridiculous.
it's just a ridiculous thing on the face of it. Like, there's just no reason for it.
And
Plus, they
is there
say,
any argument that you've heard of why they do this?
and they're not a good one anyway. Just because it's for the baby's health. That's their argument. It's for the baby's health and well-being.
It's so crazy. And honestly, I think especially new mothers, but mothers who've just given birth, and it's like the trauma of birth like takes over your mind. And I don't know that you're very present for decision making if you haven't thought pretty deeply ahead of time of exactly what you want and have someone there who's going to back you up and stand with you on it. I don't know. I don't know that people even probably think about it.
No, they probably don't, because then you have these doctors and nurses and these professional medical professionals coming in and telling you, yes, this is for the health of the baby. We need to do this. There's your authority figure again.
Right.
The guy in the lab coat comes in and says the baby needs this. So, any good parent wants what's best for their baby. So,
especially in that moment where you're probably like overwhelmingly like protective, like, yes, I want my baby to live.
And that's the thing. They take advantage of that. They take advantage of the psychology of the situation. And that's a lot to do with it.
And that could be a whole episode that I would like to do about birthing in general, because that whole ride is insane. But yeah, well, let's bring it back a little bit so we can start to get the story of how you got to where you're at with vaccines. What was your earliest life like?
Well, I grew up, my parents got divorced when I was very young. I was like 2 or 3 at the time. So, I lived with my mom and my older sister. So it was just the 3 of us growing up. And, I had a lot of like weird experiences as a child. I had like a lot of paranormal experiences and things like that. So I was always kind of interested in the occult and all of that kind of stuff that goes along with it, UFOs, things like that. I was your typical weird kid. So,
yeah.
And when I got into my early teens, I dabbled in the occult and stuff. And, I always kind of had that interest. So, as I grew up and stuff, I met my wife, and I wound up becoming a born again Christian. So, it's kind of a backwards process from most of the people that I run into who say, they were Christians, but then they walked away from it because there's just, so many things that are just contradictory in the Bible and stuff like that. And from their viewpoint, it just seems, like rather strange. So
Right.
they've walked away from it. And I was kind of the opposite. I came from, the occult and stepped into Christianity.
Yeah.
And now I here's the thing that gets me is in a lot of these circles and stuff that talk about occultism and things like that. There's so many people that are just so negative towards Christianity.
Yeah.
And here's what gets me is occultism and Christianity and occultism in the Bible, they're inseparable.
True.
They go right along with each other. And people who are disregarding Christianity and some of the teachings and stuff and disregarding the Bible, they're kind of throwing the baby out with the bathwater when you look at it from that perspective. There's a lot of truth in there that could be garnered from that.
I'm with you. I totally agree with that.
Yeah, I had a hard time at first going back down this road, looking into the occultism subjects and stuff like that, because much of Christianity, I mean, any mainline churches or anything you go to, they're all so severely indoctrinated and controlled from, the top down.
Amen.
And they're just infiltrated with, disinformation and stuff like that.
And parasites.
Right. Precisely. And it's all dogma. All these churches teach is dogma.
Yes.
It's all dogmatic thought.
And it's more of that same authority, like you trust the person at the top and don't question anything.
That's the thing. So, I mean, they have these authority figures saying, telling you that what you just read, this is how you're supposed to interpret that. Okay. Well, I don't look at it from that viewpoint myself.
Right.
I mean, I could read it and interpret it myself and know what it says. I know what the words on the page are saying. And, it's just one of those things where, you could go back and forth for hours on theology and stuff like that. I got into studying theology and, end times prophecy and things like that, eschatology. I studied all of that in depth for many years and came right back to occultism with it all too, because like I said, it all ties together. I mean, you can't have one without the other. And people get a bad taste in their mouth over Christianity if they're kind of, because they have this dogma and stuff pushed on them and forced on them. And I've been there and I've seen it, and it gets a little old. You have people, you're going to go to hell, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
Well, that's not what you need to hear. And that's not their place to tell you that.
Right.
The Bible says, judge not lest ye be judged.
People forget
I'm
that.
I'm not perfect. And, I don't know anybody who is. So I'm not going to go around passing judgment on people, because I could have that same judgment passed on me, because honestly, anybody could. What is that weird noise?
I think someone drove by in my neck of the woods that was really loud, and it somehow messed up your audio.
Okay.
Whatever.
All right. I was just wondering if that was something on my end here. But no, but anyway, so that's kind of where I came from. So I came full circle from, I grew up, had a lot of weird paranormal experiences, always interested in the occult, became a born again Christian, and had a hard time for many years kind of dealing with the fact that I've kind of been called back in this direction again, because, that dogma and that programming that they put into you in the Christian church, oh, this is bad, this is evil, this is,
right.
And it took me many years to kind of break free from that and understand that, no, it's okay. You could be a Christian and still look at this stuff, and you know what I mean?
Right. In fact,
and be interested in it and study it.
Yeah.
And it goes hand in hand. It ties together. And there's just so much depth of meaning, actually, not only in the Bible, but in like a lot of different things. So you have to look at esoteric as well as just the exoteric. And most of the mainline churches and stuff, they just push exoteric doctrines and dogma. Like I said, It's all dogma. And, basically the simple teaching of Christianity is love God and love your neighbor as yourself. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it in a nutshell. That's all. That's all that it is, and it's all that it should be. And people just read so much other stuff into it, and you know, it's all for division's sake, and that's what it
Right.
is. Even if you look at there's so many different types of Christianity, like different sects of Christianity, different denominations or whatever you want to call them,
Yes.
and they all fight over stupid things, and it's all dogma, all of it.
Yes.
And when
I
it comes
know.
to it, it's supposed to be simple. Christianity's simple: love God and love your neighbor as yourself, and that's it. Everything else is commentary.
And
That's
if you
all.
had this structure that like reached, all across the world, but they're all going to be divided by these tiny, tiny little differences of interpretation, like what a waste of energy and power. You could be united in something. And imagine if that group of people that called themselves Christians got over all the little divisions and decided to all, I don't know, focus on like one issue, like the whole world would change. But I think that's the opposite of what a lot of these systemic structures are kind of intended to do, is like you were saying, cause division, but also just to disempower, right? Like you're not,
Right.
like you're a lowly, dirty sinner who can't even figure out this Bible by yourself. So come, let us tell you how to think and what to do. And if you're
Right.
lucky, you'll be saved.
Right. And that's the other thing. All religions, it's a control structure, all of it. So I mean, there are truths in there, and that's the thing. You can't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
No, you really
There's
can't. And there's deep truth in there, and there's really esoteric, like you were saying, and like encoded
right,
truth in there.
and I think that's one of the other things that it's this kind of religious structure is designed to do. It's designed to give people a bad taste in their mouth over it, so that they
Good point.
completely walk away from it. And
Yeah.
that's what I see by and large with a lot of people that I communicate with online and stuff. They really they get this bad taste in their mouth over it because the dogma and all of that stuff that's pushed by the control structure. Uh, it just has an effect on people, and they just don't want anything to do with it anymore, and they get tired of hearing the same old "you're no good, you're no good, you're no good." Well, of course you're going to walk away from that.
Right. You're going to rebel
That's what I
against
do.
it.
Right. And like I said, it's a shame because it's like throwing out the baby with the bathwater. So, you know,
That's a great point that I hadn't really thought of, that there's truths hidden there, and kind of gems that can be found that people will never see if they're kind of turned away by their distaste for this,
right,
inability to question and feel empowered and
right.
whatnot.
That's the thing. And the control structure doesn't like it when you question the narrative. And
No.
that could be said for, yeah, for any point of society. And religion, that's just one of the many control facets that they have. I mean, there's three major facets that they use. They use religion, they use economy, and they use military. Those are their three core constituents that they use for the control structure. So, you got your Vatican City. You have your financial center in London and your military in Washington, D.C. These are
And
your three big city states that control the world.
yeah, and
They're
aren't
all,
they all outside of any actual nation?
yeah, they're city states. They're the only three city states in the world right
Oh,
now.
they're literally known as city states.
They're literally city states. They exist
Wow.
as their own thing. The city of London, it's separate from London proper. Uh, it's the financial district of London. That's your financial center. And then you have the Vatican. That's your religious center. And Washington, D.C. That's where the military might comes from. And these are the three branches that they use to set up this control structure worldwide.
It's like we already have and have had for quite some time a one world government. It's just masquerading as a multi-nation show.
Yeah, pretty much. They haven't got it completely deadlocked together yet, but it's coming fast.
The bones are there.
Right. That's the thing. Yeah.
Yikes.
So,
Yeah, I remember learning that and just being like, "What? Nobody cares. Nobody's going to pay attention to this. Nobody's going to teach us this. Like, how do we not look at that and like ask ourselves what it means? But I don't know, we're mired
no,
down in too many weird details to care, I
that's the
guess.
thing. Yeah, that's the thing. This world anymore, we're especially here in America, we're so bogged down in complacency.
Yeah.
That's going to be the undoing of us is this complacency. Nobody cares because you know what? When it comes down to it, they could go down the road and get their three pizzas and bring them home and watch the football game on Sunday night.
Right.
And that's what people are interested in: bread and circuses. And that's pretty much it.
drink away your troubles and watch your shows.
Right, and let somebody else worry about it.
Yeah. And I mean, it's another thing that I go back and forth. I have a hard time because I don't want to blame people too much because the system was set up to create them that way, or, you know, to push them into that direction. And like, it takes a lot of energy to resist that. But on the other hand, I'm like, everybody really is responsible for themselves. Like, you're choosing that, you know, in the end, you're choosing it. So
Right, absolutely.
I have some compassion, but I also have some like, get your shit together, bro.
Yeah, really. I mean, it's an insidious system when you think about it. Yeah, that's what it's designed to do. It traps you. It just keeps you interested in matters of no real importance, and you know, it just kind of giving away your power to somebody else, and that's what it is.
Yeah,
So
it's so
you
much
allow
easier.
yourself to be controlled. You give them your consent to, you know, do whatever they want to do.
Yeah,
As long as
it
you
is.
have a food on your table and are mildly entertained, you know, that's pretty much where we're at here in America.
Right.
Everybody has the latest new device, sell the phone or something in their hand, and you know, yep, I got mine too. I mean,
Yeah,
and those are designed to be addictive too, and that's a terrible thing. I'm hooked on that thing. I take it with me everywhere.
it's
I do
true.
everything. It's sad, and I speak out against it all the time, but it's habit forming, and it really is, and that it's designed to be that way.
Man, I
It's a
think it
mind
was the Great Baldini most recent episode of Crow that were they talking about using flip phones? I don't know if you've heard that one yet, but I was like, God, I should go back to flip phones. Like, what, this thing, I seriously, like, I'll hold it next to my speaker. I have it on airplane mode right now, where it would show you. I could probably do it, but if I hold it next to my speaker, my computer, it starts twitching out and making interference. I just turned
Oh
it off.
yeah,
You hear it?
yeah.
Yeah.
I just heard. Yep.
So that's disturbing. I mean, that's like blasting into my pocket, my body all day long, you know.
Oh,
But
it's not only that. I mean, if you think about it, even if you don't have a cell phone, we're getting blasted and irradiated all day long with you know, the cell phone networks and Wi-Fi
yeah,
and everything everywhere you go. It's a giant radiation soup out there, the
it's
microwave soup.
disgusting.
Yeah, there's
Especially
just
like,
no escaping it.
no, I know there's I'm gonna hopefully have Matt Landman on soon, and he is making a clothing line. I don't know um how successful it'll be. Hopefully he makes it, and hopefully it actually works, but it's supposed to be clothing that looks normal. Like, it's not like weird suits you're putting on of armor or whatever, but it's supposed to be woven with silver, and that's supposed to help deflect some of the radiation at least. So I'm kind of excited about things like that, where maybe we actually have a chance to protect ourselves, because seems pretty unfair that none of us were asked if we wanted 5G, but they're going to do it anyway, and none of us were asked if we wanted the skies to be filled with hazy chemicals, but they're going to do it anyway. You
Right,
know,
and
but at
they've
least
been
maybe we
doing it
can.
for a long time, so
Right.
that's the other thing. They're just now fessing up to a lot of this stuff. It's really strange, and Matt's a great guy. I wish him nothing but the best. He's
Oh,
the
cool.
hardest working activist out there. Honestly, he is, and I hope his clothing line does well.
Oh, that's
So
cool.
yeah, he's a great guy. He really is. His heart's fully in it. So he gave up, you know, uh, a really good paying job and stuff to do this. This is
Oh,
what he does full time. He's an activist. I mean,
that is
through and through.
awesome.
So
Yeah. We need more
yeah, he
people.
could
I
have.
mean, I get some like disillusionment in the system from time to time. I'm like, what's the point of trying to change it? They've got this on, like, this is their plan. Like, what are they really going to let us protest it away, or you know, litigate it away, or whatever? But at the same time, if you never try, then you've already lost. So I really appreciate people who are working to try and accomplish something while we still can. Um, but that disillusionment brings me to want to ask you what some of your major disillusionments have been along your path.
Well, one of the biggest disappointments that I've faced is growing up. I was a huge fan of science and science fiction and the space program and all of that. I bought the NASA line, hook, line, and sinker for the longest time. I was all into that. Wanted to be an astronaut at one point as a kid. So, you know, when I discovered there were such major discrepancies in the accounts of the moon landing and stuff like that, and basically at this point, I could tell you, if we've ever been to the moon, it was not in the Apollo program.
Yes.
So I have a lot of disillusionment about that. Basically, uh, anything that NASA puts out is suspect. So
Instantly.
with that, yeah, with that in mind, because they put out so many things that are just fake and provable fakes and provable nonsense and provable lies that anything they put out is not trustworthy. So, I mean, you take it with a grain of salt.
Yes.
And that was one of my biggest disappointments because honestly, uh, I'm going to be 44 years old this year. So, like, I grew up all through that time with the space shuttles and everything like that. And we were supposed to be, have a presence on the moon and be on other planets and stuff by this point. I mean, the cartoons I watched as a kid, they were lying to me. We were supposed to have flying cars and stuff. I'm still waiting for that.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's one of those things where how far have we really come in the past 70 years?
Right.
And that's the thing that I find most disappointing. And that was one of the biggest things that really kind of got me questioning things when, I discovered, what they're telling me space is and what it actually is are probably two different things.
Two
So,
vastly different things. And
right.
I'm with you. Like I am a big science lover. I love science. I just don't think many people are doing it actually. But I grew up with the same sorts of things, and love of space is so easy to have because it's like a frontier, right? Our final frontier. Like we want to go out into the wilderness and not necessarily conquer, but explore and then we don't get to do that now because if you look hard enough, it seems like you said, space is not what we were told. But it's weird to me because there was all this, there's sort of the conspiracy theories that there's like structures on the moon and structures on Mars and they're hiding this from us. And do you think that is put out as like another way to sort of trap people into believing in space exploration? And
Absolutely. Absolutely, I do. I think that's just another facet of the psyop that is, the nonsense that we're told is outer space.
It's such depth to their depravity. It's so weird. Like
it is. I don't think space is anything like what it's described to us. Like,
yeah.
At this point that I can't really say. I don't know what's out there. I wish I did, but it's not what they're presenting to us. I can tell you that much. And even things like, if you look at like the popular shows like Ancient Aliens and all of that, that's all a psyop, all of it. Like so it's like, the sources they use are questionable at best to present these things, and what they put forward is kind of it's dubious. So there's not much backing up their claims that they're making. It's fun to think about. And I do enjoy watching those shows and stuff. And I do have an open mind, but by and large, I've never found anything concrete that proves, alien life anywhere.
Right.
So that's one thing. UFOs, they do exist. That's an actual thing.
Oh, yeah.
That's an actual thing. I think, a lot of it is man-made technology, though.
I feel like it has to be most of it. And then I think people kind of pass over the idea that there's possibly, I believe there's plenty of entities that are interdimensional or interconsciousness or something, like I don't think everything you necessarily see has to be a physical object, but I think a lot of what people see in the sky are probably craft, especially when you consider that the government's technology may be as much as like, what do they say, 50 years ahead of civilian technology?
At least 30 to 50 years. That's what they say. And that's actually probably about as close to a true number as we could get. Things in these compartmentalized programs and stuff are advanced far beyond what we view as the state of the art in the public. So
people who say things like, oh, it couldn't have possibly been, it's like, well, we really don't know what could possibly be.
Yeah, I mean, they said that about the stealth fighter and the stealth bomber. You remember that? Well, I could say growing up in the 1980s, I saw a stealth fighter fly overhead before they were even announced to the public. It was the boomerang shape. It was the old style one, the first style one that had the jagged edges along the wings.
Yeah, I can picture it.
One of those when I was a kid, flying silently overhead, very slowly.
Wow.
So, and that was one of my UFO encounters that I had.
Oh, that's one of your paranormal experiences.
Well, yeah, but that one was, it was nuts and bolts technology that later proved to be something true. So if I saw that in the 1980s, before they even announced that it was even such a thing, and that was developed actually back in the early 1970s, if you go back and look, it was flying for at least a decade at that point in the
Wow.
1980s when I saw it. So they have secret programs and stuff that you don't even hear about. For instance, there's a government agency called the NRO, the National Reconnaissance Office.
Huh.
Now, this agency operated completely in secret for over 30 years. Since the 1960s, it only became public knowledge, disclosed in, I think it was 1992.
Wow.
So for over 30 years, they operated completely in secret. Nobody knew they existed.
That's crazy. So, and they
So
go out and get, I'm guessing like craft that don't end up where they're supposed to or something, or where people have sightings that they're not supposed to have seen something, or.
Well, possibly. I mean, this agency is heavily involved with what we would term the secret space program, the NRO. I think that's the core source of where your secret space program comes from. They do an awful lot with like defense satellites and things like that. That's what they publicly disclose. So who knows what kind of technologies they really have up there right at this point. So, and what kind of programs are even around that we don't even know anything about.
Yeah.
If they could keep that program, that entire agency a secret for over 30 years, you can't tell me government secrets. They can very well.
Right. Especially when now that they have like whatever AI or machine learning or bots, whatever that can kind of do it in real time, can kind of censor in real time almost. Now it's even easier. I think.
Right. There's a lot of that stuff going on out there too. Like the state of the technology as we know it today, what we see in the public view, that's the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
If you see something coming out, and this is the newest, latest state of the art thing, and you see it coming out, you could rest assured that it was put through its paces by the military-industrial complex 30 years ago or more, and they're rolling it out for public consumption now. They've gone through it, they've utilized it for every military purpose they can, and they've figured out everything it can do and what it's useful for. So, if you see any technology come to the public forefront, it's already been tested 30 years ago. They know what it could do 30 years ago. So keep that in mind.
It's crazy. And then I'm just like, okay, well, if you have all of this magical stuff, like, do you remember fairy dust? When fairy dust came out as a thing?
I don't quite remember that. Refresh my memory on that.
It's some kind of like, it was touted as some kind of like nano dust that you'd like sprinkle it on a finger that had been cut off and it would like regrow your fingertip. And at the time I was like,
okay.
What? This is insane. And I was like, is anybody noticing this? Nobody cares. And now I can't find any mention of it. So I'm like, did they just tell us really quickly, like release like a few articles, say like, well, we told you, but no one cared. And so now we keep it to ourselves. Like it's some sort of karmic balance or thing. I don't know, but no, I can't even find mention of it now.
That's actually something similar to what I've found that DARPA is actually studying right now. They have this nanotechnology that's supposed to help to regenerate the human body and help with healing.
I don't want them to regenerate my body with their crazy nano dust.
No, this is actually something that have you heard of? There's something called the Talos suit. Have you heard of that? TALOS. This was a DARPA program.
Familiar.
This is basically your real life Iron Man suit.
Oh yeah, and he's like in like a suit, and it's the person is actually inside, and it like protects them and makes them stronger.
Yeah, it's like an exoskeleton where the soldier could lift more than their weight. Well, they also had a part developed in this where it was nanotech that would help if the soldier got healed to stop the bleeding and stuff like that. Actually built into this technology. So this is something they're looking at. I don't know how far advanced they are with it now, but I mean, this is an actual DARPA project. You can look this up. I'm not making this stuff up. So
I believe you. DARPA is scary as fuck.
Yeah, and you got to realize that if this thing is seen in public, think about what they possibly could have with it. What the part of it that we see disclosed to the public is at least 30 years old.
That's what I'm sitting here wondering too. I'm like, do we already have android people that are super strong, super fast? Like, we know they can cloak too, right? So they can probably be invisible. Like, that's crazy.
It is. And when you think about all these different technologies and stuff that we're seeing now, these emerging technologies, when you keep in mind this little nugget in the back of your head that this has probably already been thoroughly tested by the military industrial complex at least 30 years ago, that leads you to wonder, what do they really have at this point?
Yeah. Yeah. Like, what are they actually working on? Where they actually want to head?
And when they introduce these things, they usually do it in small little baby steps at a time. So that's the thing. We're only seeing like the beginning phases of what they're looking for. They use long-term planning on a lot of these things,
Yeah.
50 and 100-year plans. So
And do you think like I feel like they would say like, oh, well, if we release too much information too fast, people will like go insane or something. But I'm sure that's not the real reason. They have proven over and over again that they don't care about us.
no, and that goes right back to the whole vaccine debate. Vaccines are not about public health, not
Yeah.
at all. Not at
Yeah.
all.
And they could be about profit, right? But like there's other ways to make a profit besides injecting really random, disgusting ingredients into babies. I always have to take it to the babies. It's really anybody can have a vaccine, but poor little babies. But what do you want to tell us some of the nasty ingredients that are in them actually while we're on the subject?
Yeah, there's all kinds of things in them. One of the biggest problems that I see with vaccines at this point is the adjuvants they put in them, and what they're putting in them now is aluminum is the most commonly used adjuvant in all of our vaccines here in America, and I think even worldwide too, if I remember correctly, aluminum. And now, what an adjuvant is supposed to do? This is supposed to be like a Kickstarter for your immune system. This is supposed to supercharge your immune system to fight off the antigen in the vaccine. So they use this to kind of boost your immune response to whatever they're injecting you with. But what they don't tell you is this also leads to autoimmune disorders. And they've known this since the 1970s, that vaccines and the adjuvants in vaccines could cause autoimmune disorders. So, you look at people having all these different symptoms anymore. Like it's crazy. Like all the autoimmune disorders and stuff you see people
Like,
have.
isn't eczema a common autoimmune disorder?
Yeah, eczema, that's one. That's just primarily, a skin condition. But I mean,
Right.
there's things like fibromyalgia,
Yeah.
um, a lot of these other ones that are kind of not really well
Debilitating.
understood. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Where your immune system's attacking your body. It's an autoimmune disorder. Crohn's disease, that's another common one. Celiac disease, all of these digestive issues and stuff too. Uh,
Mhm.
these are all common autoimmune disorders, and they've known since at least the 1970s that vaccines can cause autoimmune disorders. So, yeah, I mean, it's kind of a nefarious thing when you look at it because there's people in positions of power in the vaccine industry who know that this stuff does harm, but
Yeah.
yet they keep pushing it anyway. Now, don't get me wrong. I think most of the people in, the vaccine supply chain and stuff like that don't really have a clue about it. They think they're doing good and they think they're
Right.
doing good work by pushing these and stuff like that. And they're collecting a paycheck and, they might turn a blind eye to something once in a while if they see something that looks a little weird just because, it's to keep it's for the greater good. So
Right.
they don't want to, badmouth the company. So they toe the company line and stuff like that. And they just keep pushing the product out. Now, that's the vast majority of the people like working in the vaccine supply chain. They're just
Right.
either in it for the money or, they really honestly believe they're doing good work and that's why they keep doing it. But up at the upper levels of the power pyramid, there's people who design uh, like many of these vaccines and decide what ingredients and stuff to put in them and tell the scientists that are working on them exactly how to do these studies to show what they want to do. These are the people calling the shots.
Yes. I
Okay,
want to
these
know who those people are. I want to know their addresses.
I do too. That's the thing. But honestly, the best answer I could give is it's follow the money.
Yeah.
Whoever's supplying the money, I mean, that's basically who's calling the shots. So the people that are providing uh, the funding in order to do this,
Mhm.
these are basically your people who are calling the shots, who are saying, okay, we want this vaccine, we want it to do this, this, and this. We want this ingredient in it. Uh, we want this ingredient in it, and we want the study to show this, this, and this, and that's what they do. So the scientists who do the studies and whatever, they want to keep their job and they want to keep the funding flowing so
Yeah.
that they always have constant work. So they do what they're told,
Right. Well, that
and that's how it gets done.
so that aluminum as an adjuvant, does it cross the blood-brain barrier then?
That's one thing. There's been numerous studies done that show that aluminum nanoparticles now, if they're under the size of 200 nanometers, they can freely cross the blood-brain barrier. They're also lately using polysorbate 80 is a popular one, but they also use other ones, and these are called phospholipids along with these aluminum adjuvants. They use these as an adjuvant too. And this also uh, helps these things to cross the blood-brain barrier.
Mm.
So that's where we're running into a real problem, because this could cause encephalitis and all kinds of different problems.
And that's when you see like children will have seizures shortly after, probably because of that.
That's what my guesstimate would be at this point from that. I mean,
Right.
I'm not a research scientist. I'm not
Yeah.
a medical doctor, but if an idiot like me could figure this stuff out, why can't the people designing these things? I mean,
Right. Well, you're definitely not an idiot, but I totally get what you're saying. They can understand. I mean, aluminum we know causes Alzheimer's, right? And we have a feeling like it could contribute to autism, as far as I understand as well, right? And it's
right, there's
interesting that
same
they
correlations are there. Yep.
and it's interesting that that's also one of the ingredients found in whether you believe in it or not, or want to call it this or not, chemtrails. We find high concentrations of aluminum falling out of the sky after jets fly by and leave giant trails that turn into misty clouds that fall down on everyone, as high concentrations of aluminum. So, like, what they want us to all become autistic and senile.
Well, that's part of the theory that I put forth in my book. Is they're using the autism epidemic as a pathway to get to the transhumanist singularity.
So this is your newest book that has just come out, and
Yeah,
and tell us what it's called.
it's called The Autism Epidemic: Transhumanism's Dirty Little Secret, and basically that's the premise that I go with on it. And there's a lot of evidence to show this is the case, that
Mhm.
they've jumped on the autism epidemic and they're using it as a tool to get to the transhumanist singularity, because they understand the mechanisms that cause autism, and they could also fix them.
Yes.
But their fix for them is going to be through computer brain interfaces, and that's what it's boiling down to. So
Oh, wow.
they're going to tie people into the transhumanist control grid, uh, using the autism epidemic as the test subject. They're testing
Oh,
new
God.
technologies on people with autism. So they're testing out new drugs and new technologies on these people. And I'm going to make a bold prediction and say that probably within the next year or so, you're going to hear some major news come out of Neuralink or some other similar company. Another one to watch is called Kernel.
Hmm.
These are the ones that are working on this neural lace technology, and I think they're going to come forward and say, "Hey, we've developed this neuroprosthetic." That's another term you'll see bantied about a lot coming up. This neuroprosthetic that's people with autism, and they're going to use it as, they're going to roll this stuff out as a potential treatment for autism and or Alzheimer's. I'm predicting that too. I think autism is the more likely candidate, though, simply because people with Alzheimer's are generally up there in age, and they don't see as much of an advantage as trying to get people hooked on this computer brain interface technology with that, like toward the end phase of their life, rather than try and get them early on.
Hmm.
So I think autism is the thing that fills the bill for that. So that aggravates me, because I have two kids on the autism spectrum. They don't need to be guinea pigs for some new scientific endeavor like that.
No. And probably because you have two kids who are on the autism spectrum, you can have, special insight into why a parent might, especially in ignorance, jump on that jump on that train to possibly help their kids as far as they see it. Like, yes, test this on my kids. I want them to, not have to suffer like this anymore.
Right. And that's exactly it. Like I said, it's kind of and it's an insidious thing. It really is, because they roll out the problem. Um, and then, it's your classic Hegelian dialectic:
Hmm.
problem, reaction, solution. They roll out the problem. Here's the reaction that they're getting. I mean, autism's not easy, even high functioning autism. My kids both have high functioning autism, but people often overlook their disability because they look normal, and outside in public on a good day, they act relatively normal. They
Right.
just might be a little quirky or something, but people don't really see it. And then there's a whole social engineering campaign that goes along with it, trying to normalize autism now.
Yes.
That's another facet that I touch on in my book. It's gone from autism awareness to autism acceptance now. You'll see
Autism
that.
celebration. It's like,
Pretty much, yeah. Did you know April now this year? This is actually Autism Acceptance Month. It used to be Autism Awareness Month. Now it's
wow.
Autism Acceptance Month, and there's actually a website set up specifically for this.
Oh my
Look,
God, words matter, and that is not an
right.
accident.
No, it's not, and that's what I mean. They're rolling this stuff out fast now. It's coming to the forefront, and
Well, and I see it. I mean, even in like things that seem as innocuous as like little memes where people will be like, autism is great, and I like love my kid with autism. It's like, well, yeah, you love your kid. Like, and then I would never, you know, take that away from anyone. But let's be honest, if you could have your kid not have autism anymore, you would. Right?
right, right. I mean, that's the thing, and they're trying to make it like acceptable, and they're trying to normalize it, and they're going about this normalization campaign in several different ways. Another way they're doing it is trying to make it look as if autism has been with us all throughout history. They're rewriting history. You could do a quick Google search, and you could find some famous people who they are posthumously attributing with autism now.
Wow.
With no proof or anything. They're just saying that it's very likely that this person had autism or this person had autism. Some examples: Charles Darwin, Albert Einstein, a lot of these people that are famous, Isaac Newton, Michelangelo, they're saying these people had autism. I'm not making this up. Go look it up.
Wow. That's blowing my mind. Like, based on what?
Based upon, the fact that they were super smart, and they were kind of like, if you look at Einstein, that's your kind of prototypical rhetorical case of autism. That's another thing they're doing. They're using this whole rhetorical version of autism to show these things and try to make it more acceptable. It's even in our entertainment. It's all through our entertainment. And I touch on this stuff in my book as well. So, I mean, there's a lot that goes along with this. So
you're talking about like Sheldon of the Big Bang Theory or something?
Yeah, Sheldon, Mr. Spock, Mr.
Spock.
Data. Yeah, there's a bunch of different ones. Even what was his name in the movie Ready Player One? Did you see that one?
Oh, I haven't seen it yet. I would still want to. I'm just really bad at seeing movies.
Okay, well, it's the character that built the Oasis in Ready Player One. He's the guy that was attributed with building the Oasis, and the people in the movie, the main characters are trying to find this this code that he embedded in the game so that they could unlock the ability to they see. I don't want to ruin the movie for you, Linz. You gotta watch it.
I'll forget it before you.
I can't think of what the character's name is, but he's basically how they portray autism on screen. But he was this super genius who built this virtual reality world called the Oasis in Ready Player One, and this is where all the people and stuff played and spent all their free time, is in virtual reality in the Oasis. And he put some Easter eggs in there where if you could find these and decode these, he put it in there so you could own the Oasis. You could be the person that inherits the Oasis, because he didn't have any heirs and he had died. So, and that's basically, I don't want to ruin the movie for you. It's a good movie.
Well, honestly, someone's told me that same thing before, and I forgot, and I'll forget this too. So,
but basically, that character, I can't remember the name they gave him. I have his name in my book though too. That's one of the ones that they portray as being your basic rhetorical, stereotypical case of autism.
And of course, it in all those ways that are presented just now, it's like, you're a genius and you're eccentric and you're quirky and you're like, very, very capable and all of these things. And it's like, you can be those things and have autism, but you can also find yourself like rocking under a table on the floor, crying and screaming and not be able to stop. So,
right.
like
that's the thing. So, I mean, that's all part of this autism acceptance movement, is they only portray the good facets of autism. And
Mhm.
it's also something that I've actually found in some academic research papers too. They're looking for what they call autism without intellectual impairment. That's what they're working towards.
Hmm. That's the
It's a
goal.
scary thought. Yeah. I
Yeah.
found it. This is in, yeah, it's scary to think about.
It's interesting, and I don't know if you would agree or not, but it seems to me like many people with who struggle with autism are, it's like the emotional capacity is somewhat hindered. Does that seem fair?
Right. That's the thing. They have some issues with communication and with being able to express themselves. Um, Most people on the autism spectrum, 44% of all people on the autism spectrum, have average or above intelligence. So
Yeah.
that's the vast majority. Now, there are lesser percentages that have either slightly diminished intelligence capacities or some that are more severe.
Hmm.
But the vast majority uh, have average or above intelligence. So it's kind of a misnomer to think that, you know, all autism is that case where, it's a 20-year-old in a diaper who is nonverbal and stuff like that. I
Right.
mean, it's sad. That stuff does happen. There are some cases that are more severe than others.
Right.
But, that what they're trying to reflect um, in popular entertainment and, as the viewpoint they're looking for is they're trying to work towards this higher functioning type autism, your Asperger's type autism,
Yeah.
things like that, where, they're just a little socially awkward, but most of them are, highly intelligent. And autism is the only disorder that has a high percentage rate of savant skills associated with it. In fact, one study showed that 60% of autists actually have savant skills of some
Wow.
sort. And that's an interesting thing to look at. And
Right.
that's one of the facets of autism that they're looking for. This all goes back to military super soldier programs, as ridiculous as it sounds.
Well, no,
These
I
are the
believe
things that,
it.
and that's another facet that I touch on in my book. So
I
it's
can't wait to read this book. It's full of like the best stuff.
it's really kind of an interesting thing. I mean, you wouldn't think that something like autism would have all these things associated with it,
Hmm.
but it does. And I really see it as being a vehicle for the launch of the transhumanist movement, for the
Especially,
transhumanist singularity.
it really makes me reflect on that sort of, they're not, like even like Spock, like you were saying, and Data. It's like we look at them and they're the reason why people can kind of idealize them is they're not like hindered by their emotions. They can be like purely logical and rational, and especially right now in this age where we're obsessed with materialism and atheism and then I think that that just kind of goes right along with that same culture, which is very similar to, like whatever you would want to think of AI being like, right?
Absolutely. And actually, artificial intelligence is modeled after autistic intelligence. That's
What?
something a lot of people don't know.
I did not know that.
That's in my book too. This
Wow.
all goes back. This all goes back to the 1940s to what's called the cybernetics group. Um, and this is, an interesting line of research to go down, and I go down it in my book in some detail. Uh, the
Cybernetics.
cy- yes, cybernetics. Most people don't understand what cybernetics is. They know that they associate like technology and robotics and things like that with it, but cybernetics had its start. It's an interdisciplinary study, and what it does is it studies whole systems operations, whole
Hmm.
system. It looks at things from a whole systems perspective. That's what cybernetics is,
Huh.
and this differs a lot from what we're taught in school
Yeah.
because they break down things into separate subjects and put them in little short time slots. Like we have social studies, we have science, we have math, we have English class or whatever.
And
So it
never do
separates.
they touch.
Right, it separates out all these different ideas and facets of things, whereas
Even though that's
cybernetics.
not what life is like.
Right. Cybernetics approaches things from a holistic view. So they figured out early on in this cybernetics movement, um, you know, what the causal mechanisms and stuff of autism are. So basically, from there, they figured out how to manipulate certain things, certain facets of it, and how to use it to their advantage. So they
But
figured out how to produce the symptoms in a laboratory setting. So if they could do that, and they know the general causality of it, they know the general starter mechanisms of it. And what it is it's the general starter mechanisms of it is dysregulation of calcium neuronal channels. That's what the cybernetics approach to this figured out early on. So we could look at different things that do cause this dysregulation or disruption of the calcium neuronal channels. And one ingredient that pops up all the time is aluminum, even in these studies. So this is what's going on, because what this does is when you disrupt these calcium channels in the neurons, what happens is this starts reflecting outwardly as things like poor social interaction skills, repetitive behaviors, just odd mannerisms. And those are basic symptoms of autism, aren't they?
yes.
When you look at it, difficulty communicating, repetitive behaviors, things of that nature. This is what it does, because, when you have this disruption in these calcium channels, what happens is it causes a feedback loop. And feedback loops are a big part of, the cybernetics approach to things. So using this dysregulated feedback loop, it causes these problems, these outward expressions in your nervous system. So they figured this out early on. So having figured it out and been able to reproduce it in a lab setting, they do know, the basic generalized cause of what causes this. So with that being said, if they know what the general cause is and they know how to reproduce it in a lab, wouldn't logic dictate that they know how to fix it as well?
Yeah.
And that's where I think this is going, this whole transhumanist computer brain interface thing. They're going to fix it with technology. They're going to, use computer tech to do it. This is, a perfect example of how the Hegelian dialectic control system works.
Bingo.
Create a problem, get a reaction from the public, because it's getting to the point where right now the official numbers are 1 in 59 with autism.
Jeez.
And there's people that are saying if something doesn't change in the next couple of years, by 2025, the number could be as high as 1 in 2.
God, just stop getting vaccines.
So, yeah. So if this continues to happen, the outcry for some kind of a fix for this epidemic is going to come. So when this outcry comes, ta-da, they already have the cure. And it's, tie your brain into the transhumanist control grid. Become one of the collective, and we could fix this. We'll use these neuroprosthetic devices to fix these symptoms and help you live a normal life.
Oh my God, it's disgusting.
And
Wow.
that's what my research has shown. This is what's going on. So, people might think I'm nuts for saying this. Stick around a few years.
No, I think you're awesome for saying this. I think you're one of the few people in the world who's thinking and, doing the actual research to go find out what could be happening. Because I dare say you didn't go looking for these results, right? Like you went looking and you're like, oh, look at this.
No, it was like, some of the things I found like that go along with this are just absolutely astounding. Like I just can't even begin to like express what my reaction was at first. And anything like this, I find I thoroughly look at and go through with a fine-tooth comb just to make sure that I know what I'm talking about, because I don't want to say something like this and you know what I mean?
Right. And not have something to back it up.
know. Right.
I appreciate that, because
got,
that's the type of thing that people then can actually have, in their holster to throw at someone to be like, check this out. Like this is well vetted, ideas.
And that's the thing. I use a lot of peer-reviewed scientific journals and sources like that. So this is not just some random blog somewhere saying,
right.
Oh, this is autism and this is what this does and blah 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 blah. No, this is peer-reviewed science. So even the people who are so into the whole scientism structure cannot argue with some of these conclusions that I've reached
Those
just by
people should be
based
the
upon
people who
looking
are,
at the scientific journals.
yes, those people should be the people who are lining up first to get it and dive into it, to hope, because it'd be cool if people went into it trying to disprove it, because then you would just have more fuel to add and patch any possible holes. It'd be like free editing.
Right. And
But
if there is a mistake in my research or something, or there's something I'm not understanding correctly, it would be great for somebody to point
bring it
that out.
on. Yeah.
I will gladly admit I'm wrong and be happy about it if
Yes.
they could prove it.
Right.
You
But
know?
I bet money that you're pretty airtight there. And but I would love it if they went looking, because I guarantee if you go into it with an open mind and you're actually looking at things and asking yourself, very logical conclusions will come, and probably your paradigms will be broken. But I want to get into, before we run out of time, all of the kind of push that's been happening lately. We kind of touched on it, but there's a lot of hysteria right now, especially about measles, which blows my mind, because I figure if they're going to push something and actually get people to be scared and do it, it would be like Ebola or something. But no, it's measles, and yet it's working. People are scared. People are terrified of getting measles, and I don't know why people don't understand measles. Not a big deal. A couple of days of a rash and a fever, and you're fine. So we have that, like the measles hysteria that's going on. We have New York City, therefore, forcing vaccinations on people. And if people aren't getting vaccinations, they're arresting and fining them. And then we also, concurrently with all of that, have multiple states that are all at once introducing legislation that would reduce parents' ability to choose whether or not their kids get vaccines. It was already pretty difficult, pretty hard to navigate for some people. And now they're trying to take it away entirely, so that there's slim to no chance that you would ever get an exemption from vaccinating your child. So what do you think about all of that happening at once?
I personally don't believe in coincidences.
Yes.
So this is planned. There's a definitive agenda and plan behind all of it, and it's very highly coordinated. As far as the measles go, measles is a relatively mild childhood disease.
Yeah.
The last time anybody in America died from measles was 2015, and actually this is kind of debatable whether she died from measles or not. Right.
Yeah.
She had measles in her system when she died, but that's it. And then prior to that, the last time somebody in America died from measles was in 2003. So you're talking, over the course of, say, 10, 12 years, one person died of measles.
That's crazy.
Now, if you contrast that with the numbers from VAERS, now this is the Vaccine Adverse Events Reporting System. If you look at their own numbers, which are, by the way, highly underreported, from 2004 to 2015, there were 108 deaths reported from measles vaccines.
Wow.
So by that math, you have 108 times greater risk of dying from a measles vaccine than from the measles.
108 times. Why would you ever risk it?
That's the thing. So, you have to do a benefit risk assessment and kind of figure out, is it worth it? Plus, there's also some recent studies that have come out that have shown that if you actually get infected with measles early in your life, and you have the actual measles, you catch the measles and your immune system fights it off and you recover, that it bolsters your immune system later in life and could help to prevent different kinds of cancers and things.
Wow.
So you don't get this from, vaccine-induced immunity. And there's something that I saw on the news tonight. My wife had the TV on, and they were on the news, and they started talking about now this is officially the highest number of measles cases we've had in this country now since 1998 or something weird like that.
They're obsessed with this right now. They won't shut up about it.
So they have some expert on explaining that the measles vaccine confers lifelong immunity, which is an outright lie.
That's a bald-faced lie.
That's an outright lie. Your average vaccine only lasts somewhere from 4 to 10 years, and some of them as little as 2 years. Wow. And that's why they give you booster shots and stuff.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't last. It may confer some resistance to you, but it's only for a very short time. Well, this expert from the CDC or wherever she was from came on and was saying on national television, and I even pointed at the TV and said to my wife, that's an outright lie. She said the measles vaccine, the MMR vaccine, will confer you with lifelong immunity to measles.
And no
That's
one's,
a lot.
and
And
even
that's
if they
approved.
have to retract it, no one will hear the retraction. So damage is
Right.
done.
And that's exactly how they operate. They go on a major, I think it was ABC News, if I remember. They go on a major network or something like that, and they say something like that, and your average sheep out there are going to look at the screen and be like, oh, if I get the vaccine, I'll never get the measles.
Yeah.
Well, why are so many people catching measles now?
Yeah. That's the other thing that I just don't get the logic breaking down with people. I'm like, so you think vaccines work, but you also think measles outbreaks are happening in populations of people who are vaccinated.
Right.
You
Because
don't
of
see
people who
any
are
problem here.
now that's the logical disconnect right there. Because of people who are unvaccinated. Like, why are you any more likely to catch the measles if you're vaccinated from unvaccinated? It's really,
Yeah.
it doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense. And it's part of why I start to lose any faith that people even have an ability to listen to a podcast like this. We know, like, the people we know who are listening totally get it, but some random person listens to this, I don't even know if they would get it.
No, and
It's like, if you can't see the flaw in your logic there, how can you understand things?
right. And that's the cognitive dissonance at work.
Probably.
They shut down to it. They just shut down to it because the authority figure told them otherwise.
Yes.
So, I mean, there was this authority figure on the evening news saying, the MMR vaccine can confer lifelong immunity to you from measles. So you should get it. And if you get a second shot, that does no harm. So it wouldn't hurt to get a second shot, they say. So
get 10. Just get one every year. Bring your family down.
Out. Get your flu shot too. That's another one that kills me is my mother had a bout of cancer a few years ago, and she's in full remission from it now.
Good.
But the doctor constantly says, you need to get the flu shot and the pneumonia shot because you have a compromised immune system. How does that make sense?
No.
I should inject this disease in me because I have a compromised immune system.
That's
like, think about the logic behind it.
Yes.
So it's just things like this that blow my mind.
It just makes me feel like we do live in idiocracy, They're like,
And
but we need to put, like, Gatorade on the plants because that's what the plants crave. You're just like, I can't take it.
Yeah, it's true. And it's like, it's all because of this whole faith in the authority figure thing.
Right.
We put too much emphasis on degrees and titles and things like that.
Yep.
This person's a doctor, so that they know better than you. Well, your average doctor has read maybe about a paragraph about vaccines in their entire medical training. So, when you look at it from that perspective, they just toe the line. They just tell you what they're supposed to tell you. Oh, it's the bargain basement, most cost-effective miracle medicine of the 21st century, and this and that. So they just go to this total party line all the time with it.
Right. And
none of them will
people
debate you about it.
Oh,
none
no.
of them will debate you.
No, in fact, like the whole ad hominem attack, it's just like, it's becoming part of our culture. Like, it's expected now that anytime someone disagrees with you, you just slaughter them verbally and that's it. You don't engage thoughtfully. You don't present arguments. You don't use logic. You just attack, and that's all that's needed. And you get applauded for it, and everyone thinks you're great. And then everyone moves on. It's like
and then you get that social affirmation from people too. Yep, you're great. You told that anti-vaxxer how it is. Those stupid anti-vaxxers.
Well, I had a student unironically say to me today, like, well, aren't you guys, as in teachers and schools, aren't you guys always telling us to just share our opinions and that our opinions matter and that we should voice them? And I was like, yeah, like, you're nailing it. Like, we are training you to just spout opinion and never think.
Pretty much. It's a sad state of affairs, isn't it? I mean, that's
super sad.
It is. But people state their opinions as facts when, they really aren't.
Do they know the difference?
Right. So, it's just one of those things.
So what advice would you give to people who are maybe just starting to question vaccinations or this agenda in general?
I would say just when your doctor says your child or you need a vaccine, just ask them for the vaccine package insert and read it. I'm telling you, look at the contraindications and the adverse effects that are reported just in the testing phase. and all the potential side effects and stuff that it could have. I mean, most of them cause things like encephalitis, Guillain-Barré syndrome, seizures. Um, these things they'll tell you are rare because they only did the study on 12 people and only like 3 of the people had this effect or something on them.
Right.
So it's rare. It doesn't happen real often. So, but I mean, these things do happen and they're widely underreported. Even the CDC, by the CDC's own numbers, their estimation is vaccine adverse events are reported only between 1 to 10% of the time that they actually happen. So the numbers that they have from VAERS, like that 108 deaths from the measles shot that I said about from 2004 to 2015,
could be 10 times higher.
Or 100 times higher.
Wow.
According to their estimates. So, I mean, you're talking that's, potentially 10,000 people.
Right.
Dead from
versus 2 dead from the measles. Maybe.
Right.
Even then, it's like, maybe it was something else. They're like, well, she had a gunshot in the head, but she also had measles in her body. So it's probably the measles.
Yeah, it had to be the measles.
Oh,
if she didn't have infection, she would have survived.
Right. Like, what else will they have us try to believe next? Let's end on some positives. What are you grateful for in your travels overall in the end?
I'm grateful for the love of family and friends and, just being able to talk to people like this and have a good time discussing things. Even if these subjects get a little depressing at times, it's good to be able to talk with people about them and have an honest intellectual discussion about it and be able to get that out to the public. But
yes.
I'm thankful for my family and my friends, and I just my family's everything to me. So that's Beautiful. Why I do this, because I care about my children's future. So
I love that. Yeah, you can see the personal motivation there makes it that much more genuine, and I appreciate that. So where are you kind of going, or where do you hope to end up?
I'm not sure. I'm just kind of trying to put this information out there to hope that I could make some kind of a difference and get people to wake up and actually think about this, that this stuff's going on, and remove their consent from the system. So
yeah,
that's what I'm hoping for. I'm not expecting any kind of wealth or fame or anything from it.
Right.
That's not what I'm looking for. I just want people to stand up and speak up and say, no, we're not going to tolerate this anymore. This, stuff's starting to cross the line now. I mean, you're getting to be where they're trying to mandate that you have to have an invasive medical procedure done at your will. And that's what vaccination is. It's an invasive medical procedure.
Yes.
So,
and if you don't have a choice about it, then what choice do you have about your body?
Right. That just says that, you give them your consent, that you're their cattle, pretty much. That's how they view you. You're a herd. And that's
what they call it. Herd immunity, yeah.
Which is a total myth, by the way, but we won't touch on that because I think we're probably getting close on time now.
It is garbage though, right? Like there's no.
Oh yeah. Herd immunity is based completely upon natural immunity to things like, natural infection rates and things like that. And they claim that the number for that would be 95%. So just based upon how vaccines work, like we stated earlier, most vaccines only last somewhere between 4 and 10 years, and some of them as little as 2. That means that anybody who's like my age, who had, their measles shot way back in the 1970s, that's long since worn off. So I'm basically unvaxxed at this point.
Yeah.
So how many adults do you know walking around have just had, a recent measles vaccine within, say, the past 10 years?
Oh God, like none. What, maybe like 5% of them? So it's like the opposite.
So just based upon that alone, herd immunity is a myth.
That just makes perfect sense to me.
Alone, it's impossible. It's never been achieved throughout all of, the history of vaccines or anything else. Herd immunity is a total myth. It doesn't exist in nature either. So, I mean,
well, and like you said, if there's
a percentage that they say anyway.
Right. And it's like you said, if there's possibly some like positive side effects of having contracting and fighting off measles, like possible cancer resistance. Like there might be a reason why some of these things happen, and we might want to let nature and our bodies sort of sort it out. I mean, you cannot stop negative things from happening, and death and disease are going to happen in the world. And I don't think it's possible to eradicate those things entirely, but there also may be some sort of purpose to some of it.
Right. And that I agree. I think things, relatively mild conditions like the measles, there's a purpose for them. And, it's kind of been understood in generations past that that's what these things are. You just, they had measles parties, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like if one kid in the neighborhood got the measles, go over Jimmy's house. You know what I mean? He's got the measles. That way we'll get it over with. And you know what I mean? Yep. So they send their kids so their kids can track this early, so their immune system could take care of it and wipe it out. And then it bolsters their immune system for later in life, so they don't come down with more serious things.
Yeah. Yeah, that and chickenpox. And there was even an article that someone posted somewhere that was from, the 80s or something. And it was like a doctor's advice on what to do with the kids when they're laid up with the measles. And it was like, cut out newspaper pictures. And like, it's like, clearly the kid's not doing too bad if you're like trying to plan activities for them while they have the measles.
Right. That's the thing. It's like, basically sitting around watching cartoons all day and, playing board games or something. And that's what the common perception of it was way back then.
We're robbing kids of their days off school. All right. Well, what can you tell us about where to find your hottest new book and anything else from your work and what you're doing?
Okay, I have 2 books out at this time. My first book was The Alchemical Tech Revolution, Fulfilling Ancient Esoteric Agendas Through the Use of High Technology. And my new book is called The Autism Epidemic, Transhumanism's Dirty Little Secret. And they're both available on Amazon. They're available by just about any other fine book retailer. My newest book may not be out in those markets just yet, through those other avenues just yet, because it takes several weeks before it actually hits, the major book retailers.
Right.
So, but it is available through Amazon now. So if anybody wants to look those up, that'd be great. If anybody wants to get in contact with me, I can be reached at alchemicaltechrevolution@gmail.com. And I also post a lot on my Facebook page, which is called Files from the Conspiratorium. So people could, hit me up at that spot too. So.
Excellent. You are after my heart, because those the subjects that you research and write about are my favoriteest things. And my own website, a lot of my content, which isn't as available on my new site as my old site when I had that, but it's most of the stuff I would write about is the exact stuff that is in your book. So I'm really excited that soon I'll have time off and I can actually read your books, because that's going to be the best. I'm stoked about it. So, fellow travelers of the path, it is a beautiful thing. This has been your electric, concentric, analog dose of wisdom, according to Wayne McRoy Jr. Wayne, thank you so much for sharing with all of us tonight. It has been awesome to have you.
Thanks for having me here, Lindsay. I appreciate it. Anytime I could come on and talk about these things, I'd love to do so.
Great. Thank you so much. Technology is a marvel meant to falsely enhance, fully entrance, and ultimately enslave each and every human on this plane. The magic of the modern world is molding your reality faster than you can identify vaccine damage assessed in secret courts. Even if you're not buying the full package insert of transhumanist agenda injected into your body and mind, transmissions of all kinds of substance, wavelength, and intention are inserted into your experience. But the most important truth of all of these is this: fear is the mind killer. You come from a place of love, and that is your superpower. No matter what they would like you to believe, you cannot actually be controlled or enslaved when you are truly empowered, acting from love, and refusing to remain enchanted. Practice walking in line with your will and your heart while you still can, and until their agenda falls to shreds, travel well, aim for balance, and always look inside first.